Well, hey everyone. I'm going live today from my basement. You can see like some workout equipment and stuff behind me. But we are in my basement because it is so cold outside and I have to repot my plants, as you can see. So we're going to be talking about how your heart is kind of like a garden today. And this is something that I love plants, okay? I have had a garden or flowers almost my whole life. Of one kind or another, and right now in my life I have indoor plants. So I'm just going to be doing some care for them today, but I like gardening, I think partially because plants and the earth and soil kind of helps me feel more connected to who I am. I have learned so much about life through gardening. Someone's watching, but I don't have my glasses on. Jenny! Hi, Jenny! It's crazy. Now, these plants, most of them, I've had them for at least a year, and they need some new soil, they're running out of nutrients, they might need a bigger place to live, and I think that is my first thing that I learned about plants, is that if they stay in the same soil for too long, hey James, if plants stay in the same soil for too long, they don't have what they need to grow and be healthy, and I think that's a lot like our hearts. If we just feed it the same thing over and over again, or feed it just once, you're not going to grow, and you're not really going to be very emotionally healthy either. So I think that's kind of tied into, I've been talking a lot about worship, as you know, and I think that's kind of tied into our worship and who we are as people, because a lot of times we get stuck in rituals and routines that were good at one point, but they're just not feeding us anymore. And there comes a place and a time in your life where you definitely have to go deeper, and you have to, spread your roots a little bit. Like this guy that I'm currently working on, he just grew. He needs more soil and space for his roots. So sometimes you have to go deeper in your roots and learn beyond what you thought you already knew and explore things more. Other times you just need to feed yourself again, mentally and spiritually. I talked about this yesterday, I think, but one way that I really stay fed is reading and talking to people who push me to grow, have had other life experiences. And I think that community and feeding yourself really helps you stay healthy as an individual. I have some plants that are in a community, actually. Isn't it crazy how plants are like life? These guys, they've been growing together, but now they're branching out, and they've got little roots that you can't see because I'm too far away, but they're ready to grow and expand. And the thing about a healthy community is that it's always getting you ready for your next thing. You're growing and expanding. Hey, oh wait, I'm gonna zoom in so I can see you, Jenny. Oh, hey, thank you. So if you are in some soil and you've been planted for a while, you should be growing. Your roots should be going deeper. I think that no matter what kind of community you're in, whether it's educational or religious, spiritual, it's easy to plateau because you think that that community is supposed to feed you. The fact of the matter is that you're supposed to dig deeper, invest back into the community, and it's sort of like a mutual thing. So this guy, somehow all my soil disappeared. So he gets fresh soil. For me, fresh soil means reading a new book. Maybe going to a different study group or watching a YouTube series. I have a YouTube series. But fresh soil is important to keep you healthy. And then sometimes, like these guys who I just showed you who are growing in their community, we have to be replanted. So what I'm doing with this guy is that they have grown so much and really they're ready to shoot off and have new roots. I'm going to trim them and plant them somewhere else. You'll notice in your life that there are people who you invest in who they have to grow somewhere else. So this little guy, I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. He has little roots shooting out. So he's going to go in my community garden over here and thrive and flourish and be a part of that. It's okay to grow, and it's okay to go to new places in your life. Sometimes people think that to be faithful and to be in one location their whole life is what they're supposed to do, but sometimes you're in a place to grow and then you grow so much that you have to spread out and go somewhere else. A lot of people will see that, like I'm a teacher, so I have a lot of students who will go away to college. That's kind of like that. Or sometimes people, now I'm not a huge fan of people starting new ministries on their own. Stephanie, hey girl. But sometimes you have to spread out and have some kind of new venture because you've grown so much and your roots are ready to expand. You have to bear fruit. So this soil is actually really hard and gross, so I'm adding more soil too. But you guys who are watching, like, I'm gonna recap because you weren't there when I said it, but I love gardens and I feel like plants have taught me so much about life that while I'm repotting my little house plants, I'm talking to you about it. So one thing that you want to make sure in life, in your heart in general, and I'm gonna get to this after I'm done planting these guys, is pruning. Sometimes there are things in your life that used to be good and alive, and now they're not. They're not bearing fruit. They aren't beneficial to you. They're not beneficial to the people around you. And even though they used to be good, hi! Even though they used to be good, they aren't anymore. They're dead. So you have to prune it off because if you don't, you're not going to grow anymore. You're just going to be investing energy into dead things. And that's not good for anybody. So pruning your heart and your mind can look like maybe stopping some entertainment stuff that you're doing. It could mean maybe moving away from certain relationships or situations that used to be great, but you've just gone in separate directions and now it's kind of dead for both of you. Maybe it's attitudes and things in your heart and your mind that you need to change. You never really know with the pruning process until you run into it what you need to let go. But if you're constantly running into a brick wall and find yourself empty or disappointed or not satisfied, there's a good chance that something in your heart needs to be pruned. So we are pruning today. Something else that I think really worship relates to in plants is that whatever you plant, it definitely grows. So if you are planting positivity and you're planting joyfulness and peace, that is what's going to be growing in your life. And if you are planting negativity and disappointment and distraction, it's what you're going to be seeing. I think that it's important to remember because we live in such a fast-paced culture, and I know that you hear this all the time, I'm sure, because I hear it all the time, but things take time to grow. So you can't read one inspiring quote one time and be like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to grow and it's going to be great. Like, you have to be consistent. And you have to continually invest in your growth if you really want to see anything change in your life. Something else that you really need to do is feed the things that you're putting into your life. So that means putting yourself in situations and around people who are going to speak life into the stuff that you want to see. If you are constantly around people who are negative about your passion or negative about who you are, that is not going to feed the things that you are trying to see in your life. If you are constantly reading or watching things that tear down your identity, you're not going to be confident in the person you're supposed to be. So as we are feeding and fertilizing our hearts and our minds, think about what you're giving it. Like, even plants, they all have different food. I'm using cactus soil for my succulents, but for this lily that I have, totally different soil. So what you put into your heart is meant for different things. And maybe what's feeding your friends isn't going to feed you. That's okay. You guys can still love and support each other. But you have to be intentional about what you're feeding your heart and your mind. And you'll see that translate into your lifestyle of worship, because when you're feeding yourself the right things, then you're going to be treating people right. You're going to be loving people well. You're going to be a positive influence in others instead of being the one who always needs help or being the one who always needs encouragement. You get to encourage people, and you get to turn that around and be there for somebody else. And that's a huge blessing in and of itself. Something else that I've learned while I'm gardening, guys, I could talk about plants forever. I should just become like Martha Stewart's garden expert, but I'm not going to because no one wants that. Sometimes, like this guy, I thought it was so cute, I don't know if you can see it, to put sand on the top of his soil. But what that sand ended up doing was creating a moisture barrier. So moisture couldn't get into the roots of this plant, and moisture couldn't get out, which created a moldy situation. So the roots started dying. It was not good. Sometimes we have things in our lives that block what we're trying to put in. They block the nourishment, they block the positivity, they block the peace and the joy. So if you are like, man, I'm doing all these things to grow and nothing's happening, two things could actually be happening. You could just be impatient, like it takes time to grow, and it's a daily process and daily decisions and mess ups and mistakes and trying again. But you could also be doing things that are blocking the nutrients from getting to your roots. So if you are spending time with people who are constantly sucking energy and joy out of your life, you're not going to have very much to grow on or give back to. Something that I read recently, I'm a Pinterest girl too. Like, listen, all my artsy crafty everything is coming out today, but it was that you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you are constantly trying to feed others, but you're not feeding yourself, you're not going to have anything to give. And that ultimately will hurt you and everyone around you who's counting on you to be there for them. So if you find your purpose in like being there for others, you have to be there for yourself first. Make sense? So this guy is hopefully going to get much more out of his living situation now that I've given him some more soil. Something else that we don't think about, or like I didn't think about when I first started gardening, is that when you're repotting plants or planting things in the ground, you have to give the plants extra soil and extra nutrients. Same thing goes for when you're doing something new in your life. You have to give it a little extra TLC and attention, because if it's new, you're not used to having it in your life. Yes, Jenny, share more about that, because I'm sure people will want to know about that. So if you're doing something new, it needs extra attention and love and effort. And that means that you have to watch out for it. You have to feed the right things into your heart more than you will once you're used to having that in your life. So if you're working really hard to be more positive, I can't read that, but I'm gonna read it. My very first one says, yes, love yourself. Exactly. Like, you have to take care of yourself first. And you have to protect the things in your heart and in your mind that you're trying to cultivate. I think this guy's good. So important. Thanks for sharing. So another thing, this guy was a transplant. He actually broke off from this bigger plant, but that's something else that I think is worth mentioning in our lives. There are broken things in our hearts and in our minds that we think don't have any value. And that could not be further from the truth. Those things have redemptive qualities. Those things have potential for beauty. You just have to put it in the hands of God, because He will take whatever is broken in your heart and in your mind and make it something so beautiful, so valuable and worthwhile that will actually encourage and bring beauty and joy to other people. This particular guy is eventually going to bloom, and I'm really excited about that, because cactus and succulents, they bloom like once a year. It's been about a year, so I'm expecting great things from my little transplant here. I think it's going to be great. Okay, so the last thing I have to do is my lily. My lily is really special to me because like all of these plants actually, they were all gifts. Somehow people just know I'm a plant lady. I don't have animals, I don't have kids, I have plants. I would have animals, but I'm never home. It doesn't work out for me. So this particular lily was given to me when someone who was very, very close and dear to me passed away. And they were kind of like an adoptive grandmother. And my job at the time gave me this plant, and every time I see it, which is every day, it's a reminder to me of people who love me, who were there for me during a hard time. I knew he needed new soil. And it's like a little treasure. I think that there are things in our hearts and in our minds that we can plant that are reminders. Kind of like I talked about on my worship blog, stones that the Israelites would set up in remembrance of people who had passed away who were important to them, and things that we can set up in our hearts and our minds, like Jenny's tattoo, that remind us of things that God has done. And so for me, this plant is one that I cultivate because it reminds me of not only people who I love, but something that God has done in my life. Because he restored me from a really difficult place at that time. And so I take care of this plant because to me it's kind of like a symbol. It blooms every year. It's a symbol to me of my heart and seeing the beauty that God can bring out of a broken situation. But it takes time. This little guy didn't have any blooms when I got him. And it's a lily, so they're supposed to bloom, but he just wasn't. And now he blooms every year for me, sometimes a couple times a year. Probably now that I've repotted him, he'll bloom again. But you have to cultivate those things in your life that remind you of God's goodness and remind you of the good things in your heart and your mind and changes that you've made, because it's so easy to forget when things are challenging. Now, I'm going to prune things because, like I said before, if you invest energy into what's dead, you are never going to grow. So I'm going to clip some of these leaves off and get these guys ready to bloom again. But I hope that this was encouraging to you. I hope that you learned something. Share with me what you do to grow. Share with me what you're doing to invest in yourself. This is meant to be a conversation, and I think that it's only going to work if you join the conversation. So you can comment later, because I will read them and respond to them, and if it's something that we should talk about more, it'll make it to my next live video, which will be tomorrow. But today, I hope that you start, if you haven't already, cultivating the things in your heart and in your life that you want to see. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Let me see if I can turn this off. Ah.